at Oleo and Aleph Zion.
Yes. Oh wait,
I
Aleph Zayin is the Chazar. Let's start with
started new one, so new, right? Okay,
with Hey Vav.
okay. Hey Bob. Hey Bob.
Yeah, Hey Vav. That's oh no, not Hey Vav. Sorry, beg your pardon. Hey Gimel.
Right.
Hey,
Okay.
Vav is my cue. Ah,
If the pot is whole, Basil says it protects everything from becoming tummy. However, Beis Shammai says it protects only food, liquids, and earthenware. Basil is subsequently ruled like Beit Shammai. If there is a bottle in the upper story full of tahor liquid, the bottle becomes tame for 7 days, even though the liquid remains tahor. However, if one pours the liquid into a different vessel, it becomes tame. If a woman is kneading dough in a bowl, the woman and the bowl become tame for 7 days, but the dough remains tahor. However, if the dough is transferred to a different vessel, it becomes tame. Basil subsequently rules like Beis Shammai. If the utensils are made of dung, stone, or unbaked clay, everything remains tahor. If the utensil is considered tahor for use with sanctified food or the paraduma procedure, everything remains tahor because everyone is trustworthy regarding the paraduma procedure. The reason for the above rulings is because utensils that are always tahor and also tahor earthenware vessels can turn tuma when combined with the walls of a structure. The
hmm.
question
That's
the question is why that dough? She's the dough that she's doing is okay, but when she
okay.
moves it,
Yeah.
what changes it?
Okay. So the reason that we have this situation is because we've been through this sort of situation many times before, and I hope it'll come back to you quickly. Uh, Remember, we said that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai had a machlokes where Beis Shammai said something that seemed like unreasonable, and then Beis Hillel heard the reasoning behind it and said, you know what, you're actually right. We're going to switch to your psak. So when we're talking about earthenware vessels, yeah, let's just take it to the original case, and you'll probably remember it. Earthenware vessels, when they have a tzamid pasil,
Mhm.
okay, they protect what's inside them. Okay, anything, and mina Torah, it's whether it's food, whether it's other kalim, everything inside it is protected.
Right.
Beis Shammai said no, we're making a gezerah that it only protects against food and other earthenware. Okay. Now, what's the reasoning behind it? They explain to because Beis Hillel say, what are you talking about? Hey, that's not the halacha. So they say the reason is because we're worried about am haaretz. Am haaretz when they lend the kli to a chaver, they're not so knowledgeable about tuma and tara. Okay, so a chaver will never borrow from an am haaretz food or a kli cheres, because a kli cheres can't be purified if it became tame. But what he can do is borrow something that's like a metal kli. Why? Because a metal kli, assuming it's just got tumas erev,
Mhm.
he'll take it and he'll put it in the mikveh and he'll wait until evening and it'll be tahor again.
Right.
Okay?
Mhm.
And normally you can trust an Amaharet to tell you, oh no, this one's Tameh Mace. He knows when something is Tameh Mace, except if it's in a kli cheres with a tzamid pasil, he might think the Am Haaretz might think, oh, this has been protected from the Ohel HaMeis because it's got a tzamid pasil, but that only works if the kli itself is tahor. But according to the Chaver, the kli cheres that belongs to an Am Haaretz is never tahor because he doesn't know how to be shomer on tuma and tara, and therefore they paskin the halacha that a kli cheres does not protect metal kalim or anything else that's inside that needs to go to mikveh. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, um, so, um, excuse me. So now the same thing happens with the kli cheres that's sitting and acting as a barrier between the main house and the skylight. If the kli cheres, if we just make this gezerah altogether, that the kli cheres only protects against if it's, first of all, it can only protect if it's whole. Okay. Now the Am Haaretz thinks it's tahor, and therefore he says, "Oh, this was protected against the tumas mace that was inside the house, everything that was in the attic." And meanwhile, the kli cheres itself is tame, and therefore it cannot screen the tuma, and everything that's inside is actually tame. So that's the reason for the strange situation where the woman herself becomes tame, but the dough in her bowl remains tahor. The woman and her bowl, assuming it's a metal bowl, or okay, the woman and her metal bowl both become tame, but the dough that's inside it stays tahor. Because at the moment we're still dealing with the gezerah.
Right.
But we're saying, okay, but the dough still remains tahor. But now if she changes the bowl to another bowl that was also in that attic, that bowl, now you're lechatchila coming and putting it into the tame bowl, the food now becomes tame. Okay, you see, so it all becomes, so when you have something illogical like this, that it speaks of a gezerah d'Rabbanan. Okay, so now we just finished off the last Mishnah with a statement that that kalim, that tahor kalim and klei cheres they can only protect when they're combined. That a kli can only protect when combined with the wall of an ohel. Okay. Now, if something is not a kli, it can actually form an ohel in its own right, as we'll see. But if something is a kli, so for example, my coffee cup over here, okay, this would probably be considered a kli cheres. It's got glass, it's got glazing, so in terms of kashrus, it's not considered a kli cheres, but for the rest of it, it's a kli cheres. So now, if I wanted to use this as an ohel, I would have to combine it with another existing ohel. So how so says Mishnah Vav. So let's say you've got a pit or a cistern. The difference between a pit and a cistern is one is lined and a pit is not lined and a cistern is lined. Okay. So now you've got a big basket. Okay. And importantly, the big basket is of a size that it is considered impervious to tumah. Okay, so the basket is inverted over it. Everything inside it is tahor. Even if there's a tumah in the house, everything inside the pit is tahor. Okay. If it was a smooth well, in other words, it is level with the ground. So now you don't have any walls. Okay. Or it was a beehive that isn't complete. It's got a hole in it. Okay. Ukafisha nasuna alav. And now you put the kafisha, the earthenware vessel on top of the hole or on top of the beehive. That's tame, because now you don't have why? Okay, it can only combine with the wall of an ohel, and there's no ohel involved in this well. It doesn't have any walls to combine with. So therefore, all you've got is an inverted kli. The kli itself cannot be an ohel by itself without combination with something else. So therefore, it cannot protect anything. Okay. If however all you've got is a wooden board, right, just a plank, or srida shein lagapayim, or a plate that has no base, that has no mechitza around it, that has no room. Okay, now that can be tahor, because that is not considered a kli in terms of tumah, and you put it on top, it makes a clear mechitza with what's underneath it in the floor, and that can protect it. So it's not, so if it itself is not considered a kli, then it can be an ohel in its own right. That plank becomes the ohel. The only way that a kli can be matzil with the walls of another ohel. So it's got to have some amount of wall on it before the kli can actually join with it. How much do you need? A tefach. Okay. So let's say let's say your pit has got a half a tefach of a wall coming up off the ground, and the kli itself has got a half a tefach of height before its base. It's not good enough. That's not, because that does not combine to make an ohel. Either the base has got to have a tefach of height, so that it's putting onto. So then you could have a small kli on top of it would help to seal it. Or else the base is very small, but your kli has got a tefach of height. Then it can combine. But a half and a half does not combine. Okay. Just as they save, they protect inside the house, also outside the house. Okay. So you've got, let's say you've got a basket which is propped up on pegs outside the house. So so imagine the thing is now vertical. So you've got a bowl, and it's been made vertical, and it's being pushed against the wall of the house, and it's being propped up on the bottom by a peg over here to hold it in place. Okay, so it's got a bulge that comes out above the ground, and you could put stuff underneath it. Okay, so that's setting the stage over here. Tuma tachteha. Now let's say you've got some kind of tumas mace underneath it, because Mina mace is sitting underneath that bowl, but it's flush against the wall. Kelim sheva kapisha tahorim. Anything that's inside the basket is considered tahor, because it's combined with a wall of a house. Okay. And that's the important thing, is that it's a wall of a house, because the house itself is an ohel. Okay, so therefore it can combine with the wall of the house. But, says the Mishnah, next word, if it's just the wall of a courtyard, or kosel gina, or of a garden, eino matzil, doesn't help, because these are not an ohel. They're just fences that go around an area, and the fence itself does not make an ohel. So therefore the kli cannot join with it, because it's not an ohel.
Okay.
Okay. Now here's another case. You've got a big fat beam that's propped over two walls. Okay, and in the middle of it, you've got a hook, and a pot is hanging from that hook underneath the beam. Okay, so now you got stuff inside that pot, whatever that stuff is, food, kalim. Tuma tachteha. If there is tuma underneath the beam, okay. If there's tuma anywhere underneath the beam itself makes an ohel, and therefore the beam spreads the tuma all along its length. You with me?
I'm just looking at the diagram as you're speaking here.
You've got a diagram in there. Okay, I don't have the article anymore. I'm back into regular kahati. But you've got tuma will spread all the way along that beam. Kalim shibakadera, if you have kalim inside that pot, Rabbi Akiva mataher v'chachamim matamian. There's a machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. Now, what's the case of the machlokes? It's not everywhere that they disagree. It's only because if the kli is flush against the beam, everyone will agree that it can combine with the beam to protect, because the beam is an ohel. Everyone agrees that if there's more than a tefach between the pot and the beam, that it's tameh, because that certainly is not going to protect against the tumah. The machlokes is if the gap is between 0 and a tefach. Okay, that's where Rabbi Akiva says less than a tefach is considered closed, and therefore it's protected. But Chachamim say it's not protected unless it's flush. Okay, and that's the machlokes between them. All right, next Mishnah, Perik Vav Aleph. Adam v'kelim nasin ohalim l'tamei aval lo l'taher. Okay, so there's a chumrah with people, and that also exists with kalim, that they can function as an ohel to spread tumah, but not to protect against tumah. Okay, how do we see this? Arba'a nosin es hanidbach. So there are 4 guys who are carrying a big slab. Okay, tumah tachtav, and they walk over a kazayis min mace. Kalim she'al gabav tamein. So any kalim that were on top of that slab now automatically become tameh, because what happens? As soon as they walk over any part of that slab that goes on top of the mace, it automatically forms an ohel. As soon as it forms an ohel, the entire area underneath it is considered tameh. And now, does that ohel also screen? And this is where the chumrah comes in, is that because it's propped up by people cannot form an ohel to screen. It can only form an ohel to spread, and therefore it goes all the way up to Shemayim. So the whole thing spreads tumah all the way up to Shemaim, and therefore anything that's on top of the slab automatically becomes tameh. Okay. Although Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with this psak, he says that an ohel that's carried by people also is a chatzitza, but that's the halacha does not follow Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, but you might want to remember that shita that Rabbi Eliezer says that the people do form an ohel to screen it. Nasun al arba kalim. Okay, what happens if this big slab is propped up on 4 kalim? Okay, 4 coffee cups. Okay, and now I feel clay glalim, clay avanim, clay adama. Even if these kalim themselves are inherently impervious to tumah, like they're made of stone or dung or clay. Tumah tachtav kalim she'al gabav tamei. We've got exactly the same situation. The tumah gets spread by the ohel, but does not get blocked by the ohel, and therefore the entire area up to Shemayim becomes tamei. Tumah al gabav, is the same story that happens if the tumah is on top of it, in both the case of the men carrying it or the kalim propping it up. If there's tumah on top of it, the tumah penetrates down through the block, spreads all the way underneath it, and also will spread back upwards.
So
It fills and carries on because it's considered it doesn't block the tumah, it only spreads it. Okay, kalim shetachtav tameim. Everything underneath it becomes tamei. Nasun al arba avanim. Now, what happens if you just prop it up on 4 stones? Not kalim, just 4 regular stones. Or al davashiyesh boruach chaim. Or even if you prop it up on 4 donkeys. Okay, tumah tachtav kalim she'al gabav taharim. That forms a real ohel. So it spreads the tumah underneath it, but it also blocks the tumah. So kalim that are on top of it are tahor. Tumah al gabav, if there's tumah on top of it, kalim shetachtav tahorin. Okay, so it functions like a normal ohel does, and spreads tumah on the side of the tumah, but blocks it on the other side. Okay, and now we can go back to Aleph Zayin.
you were confusing. Okay, Aleph Zayin. Limbs have no minimum size. Even a limb of a corpse smaller than an olive, or a limb of a carcass smaller than an olive, or a limb of a sheretz smaller than a lentil convey the tumah. There are 248 limbs in a purpose, 30 in the foot, 6 per toe, 10 in the ankle, 2 in the leg, 5 in the knee, 1 in the thigh, 3 in the hip, 11 ribs, 30 in the hand, 6 per finger, 2 in the forearms, and 2 in the elbow, 1 in the upper arm, and 4 on the shoulder, for a subtotal of 101 on one side and 101 on the other side, plus 18 vertebrae in the spine, 9 in the head, 8 in the neck, 6 in the chest, 5 in the genitals. Each of these limbs convey tumah via touching, carrying, or ohel. When is this so? When it contains sufficient flesh to heal. But if the limb does not contain sufficient flesh to heal, it conveys tumah via touching or carrying, but not via ohel. These convey tumah through ohel, a corpse, an olive's volume of a corpse, an olive's volume of a netzel of a ladle full of corpse powder, the spine and the skull, a limb severed from a corpse, and a limb severed from a living body that have sufficient flesh to heal a quarter cob of bones. Even if it is less than most of the frame or less than most of the numerical majority, most of the skeletal frame or numerical majority of the bones is of a corpse, even if it comprises less than a quarter cob of bones, all of these convey tumah. How many bones are a numerical majority of the bones in the skeleton? 125. A quarter leg of blood and a quarter leg of death blood convey tumah if they are from one corpse. Rabbi Kiva says even from 2 corpses. If all the blood of an embryo emanated, Rabbi Kiva says even a tiny amount contains tumah, whereas the sages say only there if there is a quarter log. An olive's volume of worms, whether alive or dead, Rabbi Eliezer declares a tumah like the flesh of a corpse, but the sages declare a tahor.
Hold on, you overshot. Beg your pardon. We were supposed to finish at the end of Aleph, so basis for tomorrow.
Oh, base is tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Kalim Kaf Base Aleph.
Kaf base olive?
That's what I'm seeing.
Of olive.
20, no, Kalim 22:1.
Okay. One who touches the yoke, the crossbar, the collar, or the beam.
Stop. Table or Dulufki?
You said 21.
22.
I'm in the wrong place. 22 Aleph, is that good? Okay.
Yeah,
The
good.
table either became reduced or was overlaid with marble and space remained on them replacing cups, they are tame. Rabbi Yehuda says only if they remain space for placing pieces of food. A table that had one of its legs removed is tahor, and the second leg was removed, it is tahor. The third leg was removed, it is tame when one has intent for it. Rabbi Yossi says no intent is necessary, and the same is true for the lufi. A bench that has one of its ends removed is tahor, and the second end was removed, it is tahor. If it has a height of one handbreadth, it is tame, and a footstool that has its end removed is tame, and the same is true for the stool in front of the kadera. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cathedra. Okay. Um,
Ila. Dalaf Aleph.
yes.
Items consecrated for the altar combine with one another from the Ela and to make one libel on their account for pigulmos or tame. Items consecrated for temple upkeep combine with one another from the Ela. Items consecrated for the altar and items consecrated for temple upkeep combine with one another from the Ela. And five components of an ola combine with one another: the meat, the chela, the flour, the wine, and the oil. Six components of a toda combine with one another: the meat, the chela, the flour, the wine, the oil, and the loaves. Churuma, Chumas Misa, and Chumas Misa of the Mai, Kala, and Bikorum combine with one another as to prohibit and to make one liable on their account for the surcharge of 1/5. Okay. Okay.
Kula pigulin.
All pickle foods combine with one another, all nosa foods combine with one another. All nevelos combine with one another. All sheratzim combine with one another. Blood of a sheretz and its meat combine with one another. And Rabbi Yehuda stated a general rule: all items whose tumah and transmission in minimum measure are the same, combine with one another. Pickle, noser, do not combine with each other.
Right, that's it. We're done.
Yeah, right, that's what okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And we are on to Elios.
Yep.
Gimel Tet.
Yes.
In three cases concerning tumor susceptibility, Reb Sadik rules that the articles can become tame, and the sages rule they can be are tahor. The nail of a money chamber and the grist merchant's chest and the nail of a sundial. Reb Sadik deems these capable of becoming tame, but the Chachamim rule them tahor. There are four things that Rabbi Gamil deems capable of becoming tame, and the sages deem tahor: the metal cover of a householder's tenny, the hanger of a stringel, and the unfinished metal utensils in a tray that's split into two. But the common agree with Rabbi Gamil in the case of a tray that's split into two pieces, one large and one small, that the larger piece is capable of becoming tame and the small is tahor. In these matters, Rabbi Gamil rules stringently in accordance with Beit Shammai, and one may insulate hot water on Yom Tov on the Sabbath, and one may not straighten a candlestick on Yom Tov, and one may not bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, only wafers. Rabbi Gamil said, in all the days of my father's household, they would never bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, only wafers. They, the sages who disagree with Rabbi Gamil, said to him, what do we do with your father's house? I'm sorry? Which father's household, they were stringent upon themselves, but they ruled lovingly for the people of Israel, allowing them to bake thick loaves of bread and even cold baked bread on Yom Tov.
Okay.
When they talk about wafers, are they talking about like pita or crackers? Or...
Let's see what how do they describe it here? This is on Yom Tov. You can right because you shouldn't bake too much bread. Says Beis Shammai. You shouldn't bake too much bread on Yom Tov because of extra effort. And Beis Hillel say it doesn't matter. You can bake as much as you need for the Yom Tov because it's because the bread bakes well when the oven is full.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Dalaf Hay. The one Dalaf Hay. The one who concludes with a section from the prophets is the one who divides the Shema and goes before the ark and lifts his hands to bless the people. If there's a minor, his father or father go before the ark on his behalf. A minor may read the Torah or serve as a translator. However, he may not divide the Shema, nor may he go before the ark, nor may he lift his hands to bless the people. One whose clothes are tattered may divide the Shema and serve as a translator. However, he may not read the Torah, nor may he go before the ark, and nor may he lift his hands. A blind man may divide the Shema and serve as a translator. Rabbi Yehuda says anyone who has never seen the luminaries may not divide the Shema. A Kohen whose hands are blemished may not lift his hands. Rabbi Yehuda says even one whose hands are stained And with woe, Madam may not lift his hands because the people will stare at him. And last week,
That's it. And finally,
okay, Caleb.
Kilayim.
Oh, I am. I say Caleb. I said Caleb.
Yeah.
Okay, Ted. If one buries turtle,
I've got
father.
Yeah.
If a stock pays a quarter of another kind, he must reduce it. Rav Yossi says he must eliminate whether it is one of a kind or two of a kinds. Rav Shimon says they said only of one kind, but they come and say any kalayim within the saw combines to make up a quarter. Quarters, okay.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. When Dawn does this apply grain with grain, grain with grain, pulse with pulse, grain with pulse, and pulse with grain. Rightly, they said garden seeds which are not used as food combined to make up 1/24 of that which is swallowed into a bad saw. Rav Shimon says just as they declared to be stringent, so they declared to be lenient. Flax combined with grind to make up the 1/24 of that which falls into a bad saw. And we have if his field was sown with wheat and divided to sow it with barley, he must wait until it becomes wormy, and if he turns it over, and afterwards he may sow. If he had already sprouted it, he must not say, I will sow and then I will turn over, but he must turn over and then sow. How much must he plow? As a furrow after the rain, Abba Shaul says so that he should not leave a quarter of a bait saw. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm gone.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.